Just do a little overview of the bill. It's been 38 years since a nuclear reactor was built in New York State. And this bill continues that pause with a temporary 2.5 year moratorium on the use of taxpayers or ratepayer funds to support the development of new nuclear facilities in New York State. And during this period, the bill creates an independent nuclear assessment task force to conduct a comprehensive, transparent, and evidence-based evaluation of the financial, environmental, public health, and energy system impacts of nuclear energy, especially on disadvantaged communities. And we know that those are the people that bear the greatest burden of our energy thus far. And could be helped the most by moving to renewables. So, the Climate Action Council in 2022, their scoping plan cautioned that the future role of nuclear power has not been demonstrated. That's, I think, key. And it should be rigorously evaluated before any expansion is pursued. So there's no publicly available comprehensive financial, environmental, health, or safety assessment that's ever been conducted on nuclear. So New Yorkers deserve to have an assessment done before embarking on 5 reactors estimated to cost about $20 billion each. And based on the GA reactors, which are only reactors built in America in the last 30 years. So that's the background of the bill. But, we have with us someone who has unparalleled expertise. So I'm very honored to have Dr. Joseph Romm with us today. He's a New York native. He's the former acting assistant secretary of energy begins with an E, I apologize. And a leading expert on climate technology, including nuclear power. He has a Ph.D. in physics from MIT and is a senior research fellow at the University of Pennsylvania. And he authored a January 2026, so very topical report, New York's Nuclear Anti-Affordability Fiasco: Why the State's Deeply Flawed Energy Plan Would Explode Electricity Rates, with an analysis of the state energy and climate plans. He's written 11 books, testified before the U.S. Senate on nuclear energy, and in 2026 was the primary presenter on nuclear power costs to the National Academy of Sciences Nuclear Board. So he knows what he's talking about. I really hope that legislators will listen to his presentation. And certainly, I really hope that people will ask their questions when he's done. So thank you, Dr. Romm, and I'm going to turn this over to you.
Thank you. Well, it's a great pleasure to speak here today. I did come out with a report in January. I have updated it now, and as of this morning. And I think the big change now is that if you're going to build 5 reactors, they're probably going to cost about $20 billion each or more. But we don't know because there's no economic analysis provided by the governor or the state on this. So that's why one of the reasons we need a nuclear moratorium. And that really the bigger issue is new reactors are a gamble that New York shouldn't take. The big risk with nuclear is that you can't build nuclear reactors without raising people's rates. No state has ever done it. The United States has never done it. And the only state that has built any nuclear reactors this decade successfully is Georgia. They built 2 of these large reactors of the kind the governor wants to build, and they cost $38 billion or more. It's hard to always calculate the full cost because it's not a transparent process, but it is the most expensive power plant ever built on Earth. It had astoundingly high electricity costs, and the impact politically was an earthquake in Georgia, and it resulted in 2 upset elections for the PSC commissioners in November. First time in decades that 2 Democrats actually beat Republicans. The other bad thing about nuclear from a cost perspective is oftentimes you don't finish the power plant. So South Carolina residents are now paying off $9 billion for 2 never finished large reactors, same type that the Georgia reactors is called the VC Summer Plant. Those reactors all built by Westinghouse, which drove Westinghouse into bankruptcy, right? So that's the state of the world today. And of course, New York has a history itself of building a reactor but never turning it on, leading to a massive rate hike. That was Shoreham. It just over a 3-year period, it forced commercial customers to pay an extra $10,000. So it's very risky to pursue nuclear power plants. They're going to have a cost overrun and they're going to take a long time. And I think when you're going down this route where the governor wants to build 5 reactors, no state this century has even built more than 2. You need a cost or safety and health analysis. Nothing, no such thing exists. I think that is the minimum requirement. The state energy plan, there's a 1,000-page state energy plan, which I did analyze in my report. It doesn't have a cost analysis. So what happened was NYSERDA paid someone else to do the economic analysis, but they paid the Electric Power Research Institute, which kind of is just, a promoter of all forms of electricity because it's run, it's funded by the electric utility industry. And the analysis is so flawed that neither the state nor the contractor would stand behind it. But the big ridiculous assumption in that report, again, that report is the sole source of the state energy plans analysis, the only analysis that we have. It assumed the next big reactor that would be built in New York State would be 30% cheaper than the Vogtle reactors in Georgia. But of course, I think everyone knows New York has higher labor and land costs than those reactors. And those reactors were built over a 15+ year period ending in 2023 and 2024. That was a time of low inflation and low interest rates. We now have high inflation and high interest rates. The 30-year bond just hit the highest rate in 20 years. So you can assume that the next reactor built if it's in New York State, if New York makes that gamble, that's going to be much higher. I've gotten estimates that it could be 50% higher, in which case this $100 billion plant could be, 150 billion. Again, without a credible independent analysis, you're just taking a huge gamble. And to give you an idea of how big a gamble is, the Trump administration has been trying to get one major utility to build one new large reactor. And this is a piece that was in Politico E&E News, from November. Again, you couldn't get any utilities in this country to say, yes, we want to build one of these $20 billion behemoths. So the governor said, the first reactor at least is going to be built by the New York Power Authority. And so we just learned, it just came out from a Freedom of Information law request. The Boston Consulting Group did a proposal for an advanced nuclear reactor that they submitted to the NYPA in July. And there's just one quote here I wanted to pull out of this, that nuclear plants require large upfront capital costs. So this is the upfront capital investment of $10 billion per gigawatt, right? So if you want to build a 1 gigawatt plant, it's $10 billion. But that's without actually building it, right? Paying interest rate costs, cost overruns, all the things that have gone wrong. Capital cost overruns, as even the Boston Consulting Group said, are commonly 100%. That's where you get the $20 billion figure, right? So, and by the way, this is from a company trying to convince you to build reactors. So it's the best case scenario. I would add that it's entirely possible to have larger cost overruns. And indeed, on this very issue, the former PSC commissioner, John Howard, has issued a warning. He in a radio interview, New York radio interview in August, he said that when NYPA owned 2 nuclear plants, they were labeled among the worst operators of nuclear plants in the nation by the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. And he noted that the Public Service Commission, again, he former commissioner, allowed both 9 Mile 2 and Shoreham to be 1,200%, a factor of 12 higher than the original cost estimates. So, New York State does not have a good track record here. And again, this is why it's not a gamble. And that's why in assembly testimony, Howard said in December 2024, this is one area where being first in the nation isn't the best idea. If someone can actually build a cheap nuclear plant on budget, which I doubt because no one's ever done it in this country, let some other state go first. It's just not a gamble worth taking. I just want to briefly point out here that from 20, this is a chart from Our World in Data. This is a chart of how the cost of electricity from solar has dropped from 2010 to 2019. Offshore wind dropped, onshore wind dropped, but nuclear energy, instead of having a learning curve, it went up 50% in price. This is globally, just to give you an idea. It is very hard to build a reactor. They're complex and they don't come down in cost over time. They actually go up in cost. And so this is a chart from October that was in the Financial Times. The data is from the well-known energy consulting firm Wood Mackenzie. This is the projected levelized cost of electricity per megawatt hour in 2030. The most expensive form of electricity they imagine is small modular reactors. And I would note no one's ever successfully commercialized a small modular reactor, so this is just a guess, a wish. But conventional nuclear and natural gas are the two most expensive forms of power. And as you can see, even combined solar and batteries is considerably cheaper. It's really been a revolution there. And I just wanted to make two more points on this chart. Just briefly on small modular reactors, this is a chart of the average capacity of new nuclear plants worldwide over time. And it's just gotten bigger and bigger and bigger. And this final jump to 1,200 megawatts, 1.2 gigawatts, is China. Virtually all of Chinese power plants are over 1,100, are bigger than each of the Vogtle plants. And I would also add that 80% of all electricity generated by nuclear power in the US comes from plants with multiple reactors. So the economies of scale are so huge that people don't just build one reactor like Georgia, they built two, right? So the notion that you can shrink down reactors and give up the economies of scale and that they'll be cheaper is ridiculous. No one believes it, and it's why no one successfully commercialized one of these anywhere. And I do also want to make a key point. You sometimes hear from advocates for nuclear power that, oh, if you don't build nuclear, we're going to build gas. Well, guess what? As we saw from that chart, gas is now very expensive because of the data center, rush to build data centers. Efficient gas turbines tripled in price in the last 3 years, and they are sold out through 2030. We're exporting our cheap natural gas, so that drives up prices. Spot gas prices soared 60% last year. And of course, when you have a cold weather like we did in January, gas prices jump again. And this is all led. If New York State builds many new natural gas plants, it is going to increase natural gas prices in the state, and that is going to affect both electricity costs because natural gas is the swing price determinant of electricity costs in New York. It's also going to cause higher heating bills, and you're going to get this nightmare. We down here in DC, where the heating bill and the electric bill in January for some people exceeded their rent. So, this is not something, a gamble that should be taken. I just want to briefly say, under the Trump administration, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission is no longer independent, right? The reason we haven't had a nuclear accident in this country since 3 Mile Island, whereas both Japan and Russia have, is that the NRC was having scrutiny of the designs of the reactors and of the operation. That's all gone. So again, if NYPA builds and runs a new reactor, that means everything that goes wrong, cost overruns, accidents, leaks, health impacts, that's a ticking time bomb for taxpayers and ratepayers in New York. And again, I just think it's a very, very dangerous gamble. And I, again, very briefly, the future is batteries and renewables. And other states are building staggering amounts of batteries. I mean, Texas and California, routinely California now during peak times 40% of the peak comes from battery storage. This is the way you solve the peak power demand problem. The economics have completely changed on both batteries and solar. One other thing, the same week that the New York State released its energy plan, Doreen Harris, the head of NYSERDA, just released an article, a guest column talking about agrivoltaics. It is now possible to put panels in many agricultural places, not all of them, 13 feet above the ground. It actually makes the panels more efficient. It can actually be good for both solar and farming. So the people who say, "Oh, where would you put solar in New York State?" The answer is there's a lot of places. And the last slide on this point is what are the power plants generating capacity that's actually being built these days, this year, even with Donald Trump as president, 2026, 51% of all utility scale generating capacity is solar. Another 14% is wind, and the number 28% is battery storage. The rest is all gas, and it's just 7%. This is what New York State should be building, not nuclear power. And so the affordability agenda for New York is the 2.5-year moratorium on any spending for new reactors. And we need to have an independent financial, environmental safety analysis. I should include health because there's new data that living near reactors is associated with higher risk of cancer and mortality. We need a moratorium on rate increases. We should speed up all the proven strategies for reducing peak demand and energy bills, battery, demand response, efficiency, wind and solar, virtual power plants, etc. We need regulations that don't encourage that. Right now, utilities only make more money by selling more power and persuading the utility commission that they need new power plants that they can add into their rate base. And critically, you're going to build data centers. They need to be at least 90% carbon free. If you put new gas plants in the state, you are saying we don't care about the affordability of either electricity or heating for the ratepayers and taxpayers of New York. Thank you very much.